The moment caught everyone's attention. Taehyung's gaze lingered on Jungkook, subtle but sharp, a tension in his eyes that fans immediately picked up on. Was it jealousy, admiration, or something deeper? The world would speculate endlessly, but in that instant, beneath the dazzling stage lights, only Taehyung knew the truth of what churned in his chest. Jungkook laughed, leaning a little too close to the female guest idol during the variety segment, their conversation light, casual, and effortless. Her hand brushed his arm, nothing dramatic but enough to twist something raw inside Taehyung. He forced a smile when the camera panned to him, but it never reached his eyes. Every instinct screamed, yet he remained poised, careful not to show the storm building within. The red glow of the spotlight painted the stage with its harsh, dramatic brush. Jungkook's smile shone, oblivious, natural, magnetic in a way that Taehyung felt in his bones. The audience cheered, oblivious to the silent tension in the corner where Taehyung stood, his jaw tightening imperceptibly, shoulders stiffening. From the outside, it looked like another playful moment on a bright, chaotic stage. But to Taehyung, it was a reminder of every fraction of distance that had crept between them lately. The cameras caught it. A subtle flash of Taehyung's expression, a half-second of something raw, disbelief, frustration, a silent ache that flickered behind the controlled mask he wore so well. Within hours, the clip exploded across social media. Fans dissected it frame by frame, the slow-motion loops emphasizing the tightening of his jaw, the almost imperceptible shift in his stance, the way his gaze followed Jungkook and the guest idol with a weight that spoke louder than words. Yet no one outside the room understood the context, the hidden history behind that look. The night before, Taehyung had lingered in the hallway long after rehearsal ended, not quite sure why he couldn't leave. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was the way Jungkook's laughter had come too easily lately, at things that didn't involve him. Or maybe it was the message Jungkook had left days ago, not ignored, but hanging, unanswered, lingering like a question Taehyung didn't want to ask. When Jungkook finally emerged from the dressing room, hoodie pulled low, guitar slung casually across his back, Taehyung stepped forward. "You've been avoiding me," he said, his voice quieter than he intended. Jungkook paused, eyes downcast, posture defensive yet tired. "I'm tired," Jungkook admitted simply. "It's been non-stop." "That's not what I asked." Taehyung's voice was steadier than he felt, though a tremor lingered beneath. Silence stretched between them, cold and unwelcoming. "I'm not avoiding you," Jungkook finally said, voice hesitant. "I'm just figuring things out." Taehyung's chest tightened. "Figuring what out?" he whispered, almost afraid to hear the answer. "We've always figured things out together," Jungkook said softly, and the words hung, fragile, untested in the quiet hallway. But those words didn't erase the tension, didn't undo the sharp, raw sensation of being left behind while Jungkook laughed somewhere else. Back on stage, the memory collided with the present. Jungkook leaned closer to the guest idol, laughing at a joke Taehyung couldn't hear. Their shoulders brushed lightly, a mundane gesture that felt like a knife in Taehyung's chest. The audience roared, producers would call it perfect chemistry. Too much chemistry. Taehyung inhaled sharply, forcing a smile for the camera, but his eyes betrayed him. Not this time, not in front of the world. After the tapping, backstage was quieter, but not enough to escape the storm inside him. Namjoon glanced up, noticing the viral clip already circulating. "You okay?" he asked gently. Taehyung removed his earpiece, ran a hand through damp hair. "Just tired," he murmured. Namjoon's gaze lingered, thoughtful. Meanwhile, Jungkook was laughing with staff down the hall, unaware of the chaos online, unaware of the intensity in Taehyung's chest. Days passed. The clip didn't fade, it grew, as social media churned theories, debates, and endless speculation. Fans dissected every past interaction, searching for meaning in fleeting glances, replaying every rehearsal, every backstage moment. But for Taehyung, the social frenzy wasn't the worst part. It was the truth revealed in the quiet moments no one saw, the hollow ache when he remembered how it had felt when Jungkook's gaze had stopped finding him first. Not anger, not resentment, but the subtle panic of realizing that someone who had been constant now held space for someone else. Late at night, under the dim glow of the city outside his window, Taehyung found himself staring at the river, headphones in, music muted. Silence was louder than the cheers of the crowd. He replayed the clip over in his mind. The flicker of emotion, the weight behind his eyes, the surge of feeling he hadn't let himself acknowledge fully until now. 2 days later, Jungkook appeared in the dorm, hoodie pulled low, hands in pockets. "You're not answering my calls," Jungkook said gently. Taehyung didn't respond immediately, leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, careful not to show the turbulence within. "I didn't mean to," Jungkook began, faltering. "You didn't mean to what?" Taehyung's voice was quiet but sharp. "Hurt you?" Jungkook's words hung in the air. "That's not what this is about," Taehyung admitted, softer now though still raw. "It's never been about her." Jungkook's eyes fell. "Then why?" Taehyung's voice broke slightly. "Because you started laughing like that with someone else, and I didn't know how to fight for this without ruining everything, without being selfish." The silence between them deepened, thick and heavy, yet full of unspoken truths. Jungkook stepped closer, hesitant, the air between them charged yet tender. "I miss when it was just us," he whispered. "Not anymore," Taehyung said softly. "But maybe it can be again if we're honest." Jungkook's gaze softened. "Honest?" "Yeah," Taehyung breathed. "I was jealous, not of her, of missing you, of losing the space we had even if I didn't realize it until now." Jungkook's hand found Taehyung's wrist, tentative but certain. "I laughed not because of her. I laughed because for a second I felt free, and I missed that." The moment stretched, delicate, fragile but full of clarity. The glare that went viral ceased to matter. It was replaced by something deeper: recognition, understanding, and the slow, careful reclaiming of what had almost been lost. The following days carried a quiet tension, an unspoken current that pulsed whenever Taehyung and Jungkook were in the same room. On the surface, life went on: rehearsals, shoots, interviews. But beneath it, a delicate awareness of each other lingered, a careful dance between closeness and restraint. Taehyung found himself watching Jungkook more than he would admit, observing how the younger moved through the chaos with ease, laughter spilling naturally, gestures fluid and unguarded. Every glance, every slight shift, carried weight he couldn't ignore. In the practice studio, Taehyung stayed to the corner, stretching slowly, headphones in, letting the music create a bubble of calm. He wasn't hiding, not really. He was just trying to center himself, to process the mixture of jealousy, longing, and relief that had settled deep in his chest. He noticed Jungkook enter, hoodie still pulled over his head, sneakers squeaking softly against the polished wood floor. Their eyes met briefly. No words, just a flicker, a quiet acknowledgement of the moment they shared, fragile and unspoken. When Jungkook began practicing his lines and steps, Taehyung couldn't help but watch. Every turn, every note, every laugh was a reminder of the gap that had formed between them, and yet also of the bond they could reclaim. There was a subtle beauty in it, something private, something only he could perceive amidst the chaos of rehearsals and cameras. When Jungkook noticed him watching, a small smile flickered, not the playful stage smile, but the real one, warm, full, unguarded. Taehyung felt a soft tug in his chest, a reminder of everything that had always drawn him to Jungkook. Later, during a break, Taehyung approached cautiously. "Want to join me?" Jungkook asked, wiping sweat from his brow. "Just watching," Taehyung replied, his voice quieter than intended. Jungkook nodded, continuing his practice with a renewed focus, aware that Taehyung was there, present, watching. The room seemed to shrink around them, the noise fading into the background. It wasn't dramatic, not loud, not intended for anyone's attention. It was simply a moment shared, a subtle reclaiming of connection. As the week progressed, small moments multiplied. Passing water bottles during breaks, a quiet nudge in the green room, an exchanged glance during costume fittings, each tiny gesture a bridge across the distance that had grown between them. The world outside spun fast, but inside the quiet bubble they were carving out, time slowed. Taehyung began showing up earlier to rehearsals, not out of obligation but for peace. He would sit in a corner, headphones in, stretching, letting the world wait outside for a few precious minutes. Jungkook often joined, silently, leaning on the same wall, sitting beside him without speaking, letting the presence itself speak volumes. One evening, after rehearsals, they found themselves on the rooftop of their building. The city sprawled below, lights flickering like stars, distant traffic humming softly. Jungkook leaned over the railing, wind tousling his hair. Taehyung stood beside him, jacket thin against the chill, feeling the gap between them narrow with each passing moment of silence. "Do you think they'll ever stop talking about it?" Jungkook asked, voice low, almost blending with the night air. "Probably not," Taehyung replied, soft. "They'll always talk." "But we don't owe them a narrative, do we?" Jungkook pressed. Taehyung shook his head, gaze scanning the horizon. "No, but we owe each other one." Jungkook turned to him fully, searching his eyes. "Then tell me," he said quietly. "You hurt me," Taehyung admitted, the words trembling yet steady. "And for a while I couldn't see anything else." Jungkook exhaled slowly. "I should have noticed. I should have fought for us before it got complicated." "Maybe," Taehyung whispered, voice softening. "But we were scared. You of losing yourself, me of losing you." The air between them shifted. Not dramatically, not with fireworks or exaggerated gestures, but with the subtle gravity of honesty. Jungkook stepped closer, careful, almost hesitant. "I've always been scared of wanting something too much," he admitted, "especially if I'm not sure I'm allowed to." "You are," Taehyung replied, warmth threading through his words. And in that quiet, fragile moment, something real passed between them. No declarations, no grand gestures, just presence, acknowledgement, and the beginning of reconciliation. In the days that followed, they navigated the chaotic routines of stardom differently. Not performing closeness for anyone, not hiding, but allowing it to exist naturally. Glances held longer, laughter lingered in shared corners, a gentle touch on the shoulder, fingers brushing, subtle and grounding. It wasn't flashy or designed for fan eyes, it was theirs, private yet undeniably real. During a rare evening off in Japan, they walked the neon-lit streets, no entourage, no cameras. Taehyung observed Jungkook, hoodie up, casual, laughing softly at his own clumsiness navigating the subway map days ago. "We were simpler back then," Jungkook said, voice light, eyes catching the glow of neon signs. "And now?" Taehyung asked, breath visible in the cold air. "Harder," Jungkook admitted, "but more real." Taehyung nodded. It was harder now, but it was worth it. The laughter, the shared moments, the small gestures, they carried a weight that no viral clip could capture. Later, back in Korea, the paparazzi caught a photo at the airport, Taehyung's hand brushing lightly against Jungkook's arm, Jungkook's attention fully on him. Not dramatic, not staged, just a fleeting, real moment. Fans dissected the photo, speculating once again. This time Taehyung didn't turn away. He smiled subtly, quietly, letting Jungkook know the signal was returned. The tension that had once sparked rumors of jealousy transformed into something warmer, grounded in understanding. Small, intentional gestures continued, passing water bottles during rehearsals, playful nudges backstage, fingers brushing, lingering glances during interviews. The world continued its scrutiny, but inside the quiet rhythm they were rebuilding, it didn't matter. The viral glare had faded. In its place, something more patient, more enduring had taken root. One morning, Taehyung found a small velvet box in the dressing room. Inside, a simple silver ring engraved with the words, "You never lost me." His breath caught, fingers trembling as he slipped it on. A silent reassurance, a promise unspoken but profoundly felt. No words exchanged yet, but the meaning resonated between them, quiet and powerful. Rehearsals resumed. The rhythm of their connection grew steadier. Taehyung no longer flinched at the camera's gaze. Instead, he allowed himself to exist in the moments with Jungkook. Every laugh, every shared silence, every soft glance was a quiet reclamation of their bond. In the evening, during a casual dinner with the staff, their eyes met subtly, quietly. No grand gesture, just a current beneath the surface, the knowledge that they had found each other again amidst the chaos. Later, outside in the narrow alley behind the restaurant, they stood shoulder to shoulder, hands occasionally brushing, the night wind carrying the faint aroma of street food. Words weren't necessary. Presence spoke more than any declaration could. "I used to think we were untouchable," Jungkook said quietly. "But it doesn't work like that. You have to choose people even when they're close, especially when they're close." Taehyung nodded, soft but firm. "I've learned that too." "Then let me choose you," Jungkook whispered. The pinkies linked instinctively, a childish gesture laden with meaning, grounding them in the present. Weeks passed. Quiet moments multiplied. Presence replaced absence. And in those fleeting, private gestures, their connection strengthened, solidified, and quietly flourished. The days rolled on, rehearsals blending seamlessly into interviews, shoots, and performances. Yet, beneath the schedule's relentless rhythm, the subtle pulse between Taehyung and Jungkook never waned. Each glance, each fleeting touch backstage, was a quiet reminder of the bridge they were rebuilding, fragile but persistent, like sunlight breaking through a dense canopy. During one particularly grueling rehearsal, Taehyung found himself distracted. Jungkook's laughter echoed across the studio, carefree and unrestrained, and Taehyung felt the familiar tug of envy, the lingering memory of that viral glare that had once sent fans into a frenzy. He shook it off, trying to focus on his own steps, but the way Jungkook moved, effortless, natural, perfectly attuned to the music, kept drawing his gaze. "You're watching me again," Jungkook said quietly from across the room, a playful lilt in his voice that made Taehyung's chest tighten. Taehyung exhaled, forcing a casual shrug. "Maybe I just like seeing someone enjoy themselves." Jungkook's smile was soft, knowing, and it lingered longer than expected. It wasn't staged or performative. It was a quiet acknowledgement, a wordless conversation that said more than any verbal exchange could. The tension that once hovered between them, the jealousy, the uncertainty, had shifted into something subtler, something heavier with meaning yet lighter with trust. Later, during a break, they found themselves leaning against opposite walls, a mere few feet apart. The room hummed with activity, but between them the world slowed. Taehyung noticed the way Jungkook's hair caught the light, how the younger's eyes crinkled slightly when he laughed at a private joke he'd whispered moments ago to a staff member. The sight sparked a strange combination of warmth and longing in Taehyung's chest. "You're quiet today," Jungkook observed, tilting his head as he approached. "Just thinking," Taehyung replied, voice low, letting his gaze linger on Jungkook's profile longer than necessary. Jungkook stepped closer, deliberately slow, careful not to crowd the space. "Thinking about me." Taehyung smirked lightly, a shadow of a grin that reached his eyes. "Maybe, depends on who's asking." Jungkook laughed softly, and the sound wrapped around Taehyung, softening the tension that had built up in the corners of his chest. It wasn't a loud, dramatic reconciliation. It was a small, shared moment, intimate yet unspoken, a quiet reclaiming of the bond that had always existed beneath the surface. The following evening, during a stage rehearsal with cameras rolling for an upcoming broadcast, the chemistry between them became impossible to ignore. Jungkook leaned slightly during a duet, his shoulder brushing against Taehyung's. The touch was accidental, fleeting, but Taehyung felt it in a way the audience never could. He caught Jungkook's eyes, and for a brief second the world narrowed to that silent exchange. The stage lights painted them both in warm amber, highlighting the subtle synchronicity of their movements. Fans who glimpsed rehearsal clips online immediately noticed. Social media buzzed. Comments speculated, edited slow-motion videos, froze frames, and analyzed every glance, every brush of hands. But Taehyung and Jungkook didn't perform for them. They performed for the music, for each other, and for the fragile rhythm they were slowly reclaiming. Backstage, Taehyung ran a hand through his hair, heart still racing from the intensity of the set. Jungkook approached quietly, carrying 2 bottles of water. Without a word, he handed one to Taehyung, and their fingers brushed briefly. That small contact sent a current through Taehyung, one that neither tried to define but both acknowledged. "Thanks," Taehyung muttered, voice low. "No problem," Jungkook replied, eyes briefly meeting his, soft but intent. The world outside might have read jealousy into every previous glance, every fleeting touch, but here, there was nothing but presence, acknowledgement, and quiet trust. A few days later, they found themselves with an unexpected pocket of time during a break in the schedule. They wandered the streets of Seoul, unguarded, unobserved. The neon signs painted everything in pinks and blues, reflecting off wet pavement, casting long shadows that intertwined as they walked side by side. The city buzzed around them, oblivious, and for once, Taehyung felt a sense of liberation, free from the prying eyes of fans and paparazzi alike. "I missed this," Jungkook admitted, voice soft, carrying just enough vulnerability to catch Taehyung off guard. "Missed what?" Taehyung asked, though he already knew the answer. "This," Jungkook said, gesturing vaguely to the quiet between them, to the space that had been theirs for years but had become difficult to inhabit. Just walking, talking, not worrying about what everyone else thinks. Taehyung's chest tightened, a mixture of relief and longing. "Yeah," he whispered, "me too." They strolled silently for a while, letting the city speak for them. Occasional laughter from nearby cafes, the hum of traffic, distant music drifting from bars, all formed a backdrop to their tentative reconnection. When they finally stopped at a small bridge overlooking the Han River, the water reflecting city lights, Jungkook leaned on the railing, jacket pulled tight, eyes scanning the ripples below. "You think they'll ever stop speculating?" Jungkook asked quietly. Taehyung shook his head. "No, but we don't have to answer." Jungkook glanced at him, eyes soft. "Just stay close. Even if they talk, even if the world watches, stay close." Taehyung's throat tightened. "Always." In that moment, the word carried weight far beyond its simplicity. They weren't promising grand gestures, dramatic confessions, or performative intimacy. They were promising presence, attention, and the courage to exist in a world that constantly scrutinized them. As the week continued, their bond deepened in subtle ways. During dance rehearsals, their movements became more attuned, synced not just by choreography but by shared awareness. When one stumbled, the other instinctively adjusted, catching them without breaking rhythm. During vocal runs, their harmonies lingered longer, eyes occasionally meeting mid-phrase, a silent exchange of encouragement and reassurance. Social media continued to spin narratives, but Taehyung no longer felt the need to monitor every comment. He found himself focusing on the here and now, the quiet, stolen moments with Jungkook that weren't meant for public consumption. Every glance, every shared laugh, every brush of skin became a piece of their reclaimed reality, untouched by speculation or rumor. Even during high-energy performances, when the crowd roared and the lights blazed, they found a private rhythm. A slight nudge during choreography, a brief handclasp, a fleeting eye contact. They existed in a bubble that no camera could penetrate. The viral glare of the past was replaced by something warmer, deeper, and far more resilient. Understanding, presence, and an unspoken pact that they would navigate the chaos together. That night after rehearsals, they lingered in the studio long after everyone else had left. The lights dimmed, the floor polished, echoes of music fading into silence. Jungkook stretched against the wall, hoodie slipping slightly off his shoulder. Taehyung watched quietly, noticing the subtle way Jungkook's expression softened when he thought no one was looking. "You okay?" Taehyung asked, stepping closer. Jungkook met his gaze, eyes calm yet intense. "Yeah," he said softly, "just processing." Taehyung nodded, understanding more than words could convey. He moved closer, standing beside Jungkook, their shoulders brushing. Neither spoke for a long while. Silence wasn't uncomfortable, it was a language of its own, a space where both could exist without pretense, without fear, without performance. Finally, Jungkook broke the quiet. "I don't want to hide anymore, not from you, not from this." Taehyung exhaled, relief mingling with a surge of emotion. "Then don't," he replied simply. "We'll face it together." And in that dim studio, amidst echoes of rehearsed songs and the faint scent of sweat and floor polish, they found each other again. Not with grand declarations, not with dramatic gestures, but with the quiet, deliberate act of staying present. Every glance, every laugh, every small touch became a vow, stitched silently into the fabric of their shared moments. The following week, the atmosphere in the studio was different. Rehearsals were no longer just about precision or perfect execution, they were about presence. Every glance, every subtle movement between Taehyung and Jungkook carried weight. The other members noticed it too. Not in a teasing way, not in an overtly pointed way, but there was a rhythm to their interactions that felt deeper, more tethered than before. The synchronization wasn't just musical, it was emotional. During a break in one rehearsal, Taehyung leaned against the mirrored wall, arms crossed loosely, observing Jungkook as he ran through a series of vocal exercises. The younger's concentration was sharp, his posture poised, but there was a softness in the way he smiled at a note he hit perfectly. That small, unguarded smile drew Taehyung's attention almost magnetically. He could feel the old pang of longing, the same one that had once made his glare go viral, bubbling just beneath the surface. But now it was tempered with something warmer, more patient. "You're starring again," Jungkook teased, pausing mid-run. Taehyung straightened immediately, feigning indifference. "Observing," he corrected, voice low, teasing, but tinged with a truth he couldn't hide. Jungkook's grin widened, a quiet acknowledgement. "Observing can be dangerous, you know. You might start overanalyzing me again." "Maybe I already am," Taehyung said, letting his words hang between them. The air thickened, but it wasn't heavy or suffocating. It was alive with attention, with the quiet electricity that had always danced between them. Later that day, the staff captured several rehearsal snippets on their phones, intended for training, nothing official. But one clip caught something extraordinary. During a dance breakdown, Taehyung instinctively reached out to steady Jungkook when he stumbled on a tricky spin. Their hands brushed and lingered slightly longer than necessary, their eyes meeting for a heartbeat that seemed to stretch indefinitely. The camera didn't lie. Neither did the footage, and it quickly made its way to a small corner of social media. Fans began to notice. Subtle shifts in posture, tiny interactions during performances, moments that weren't choreographed, all were analyzed, discussed, and dissected. But Taehyung didn't care about the noise. He only cared about the unspoken language he shared with Jungkook. That evening, after rehearsal, they found themselves alone in the green room, lights dimmed, the city outside casting an orange glow through the windows. Jungkook sat cross-legged on the floor, headphones in, lost in music only he could hear. Taehyung leaned against the wall, watching quietly, noting how comfortable Jungkook had become in these small, unguarded moments. It was a stark contrast to the polished persona the world was accustomed to seeing on stage. "Thinking about the clip?" Jungkook asked suddenly, tilting his head, eyes meeting Taehyung's with that familiar warmth. Taehyung exhaled softly, almost imperceptibly. "Maybe. People are going to make a big deal out of it." Jungkook's smile was gentle, teasing but calm. "Let them. We know what it really was, right?" Taehyung nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Yeah, just me being me." Their laughter was soft, private, a reprieve from the chaos outside. It wasn't grandiose or performative. It didn't need to be. These moments were theirs alone, and the security of that shared space was intoxicating. Over the next few days, the intensity between them grew in ways that weren't overtly noticeable to anyone else. During vocal runs, Taehyung found himself adjusting his timing to match Jungkook's phrasing. An instinctive synchronization that felt effortless. During choreography, their steps aligned more closely than rehearsed, almost like a silent conversation. Every glance, every movement, every breath seemed to echo the understanding they were rebuilding. Attention, presence, and quiet trust. One afternoon, they were tasked with a live stage run-through for an upcoming broadcast. Cameras flashed, lights glared, and the energy of the crew buzzed in the room. Jungkook leaned slightly toward Taehyung during a duet, brushing shoulders in a fleeting but noticeable touch. The movement was small, almost imperceptible, but Taehyung felt it deeply. "You're feeling that too, aren't you?" Jungkook whispered during a break, leaning close enough that his breath brushed Taehyung's ear. Taehyung swallowed, heart racing. "Yeah," he admitted, his voice barely audible, "every time." It wasn't jealousy anymore, not in the way it had been before. It was attention, desire, and care wrapped into one unspoken promise. Their shared presence created a rhythm that was electric, magnetic, and undeniably real. Later, after the rehearsal, they lingered in the studio, alone this time. The lights were dimmed to a soft amber, the floor polished, reflecting their figures like quiet sentinels in the space. Jungkook leaned against the wall, hoodie slipping slightly, eyes soft but focused. "You've been quiet all day," Jungkook observed, crossing his arms loosely. "Just thinking about you," Taehyung admitted, the words slipping out before he could stop them. Jungkook's lips curved into that slow, knowing smile, the one that had always disarmed him. "Good thoughts, I hope." "Always," Taehyung said, the word heavy with sincerity. The air between them shifted, dense with anticipation and unspoken words. For the next hour, they didn't need to speak. Every glance, every subtle brush of shoulders, every synchronized movement became a dialogue of its own. Taehyung felt the lingering warmth of their shared history, the quiet reassurance that they were still tethered to each other despite the noise of the world. When they finally left the studio, the city was alive with neon lights and the distant hum of traffic. They walked side by side, hands brushing occasionally, the space between them intimate but respectful. Fans didn't notice the nuance in that moment. Cameras didn't capture it. But for Taehyung, every second was a quiet reclaiming of connection. The following morning, during a photo shoot for a magazine spread, Taehyung noticed how naturally Jungkook moved in front of the camera, yet how his eyes constantly flicked toward Taehyung, seeking acknowledgement, approval, attention. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but Taehyung saw it. He caught every glance, every micro-expression, storing them like precious keepsakes in the back of his mind. When a makeup assistant accidentally brushed Jungkook's hair into his face, Taehyung instinctively reached forward, smoothing it back. Their eyes met for the briefest moment, and the world seemed to pause. It was a quiet, fleeting gesture, but for them, it carried the weight of countless unspoken words: care, attention, presence. By the end of the week, clips from rehearsals and casual moments began circulating online again. Fans noticed the growing chemistry, the subtle touches, the meaningful glances, the energy that had always existed but was now undeniable. Speculation reached new heights. Social media erupted with commentary, edits, and theories. But Taehyung didn't flinch. He didn't hide. He didn't retreat. Instead, he found Jungkook after rehearsal, backstage in the quiet of an empty hallway. The younger leaned against the wall, breathing softly. Taehyung stepped closer, a small smile tugging at his lips. "They're going to talk no matter what," Taehyung said, voice calm but steady. "Let them," Jungkook replied, eyes meeting his. "We know the truth." Taehyung's heart swelled. The viral glare, the jealousy, the speculation, they were all gone now. What remained was a bond stronger than any rumor, any headline, any clip that could ever go viral. Presence, trust, and attention, the kind that didn't need validation. And in that quiet hallway, surrounded by shadows and the faint hum of distant music, Taehyung finally understood something essential. It wasn't about controlling perception. It wasn't about proving anything to the world. It was about being seen, acknowledged, and present for each other, even in the smallest gestures. The next performance was in a packed arena, thousands of fans screaming, lights flashing in every direction. The energy was electric, the kind that made every heartbeat sync with the bass pounding through the stage. Taehyung stepped into the wings, watching Jungkook across the stage as he warmed up, stretching and humming quietly to himself. Something about the way he moved, so effortless yet precise, tugged at Taehyung's chest. It wasn't just admiration. It was longing, awareness, the feeling of someone noticing every detail about a person and quietly memorizing it. He pushed the thought aside as the intro music hit. Stage lights sliced across the arena and Taehyung moved into position. They had performed together countless times, but tonight there was an undercurrent, something different. Every glance they shared, every unspoken signal felt magnified under the glare of the spotlight. He caught Jungkook's eye as the first verse began, a small, fleeting moment, and the younger responded with a micro-smile. It was enough to set Taehyung's pulse racing. During the bridge, they were supposed to circle each other for choreography. Taehyung found himself stepping just a beat closer, not because the choreography demanded it, but instinctively drawing nearer to Jungkook. When their arms brushed, it wasn't casual. It was electric, intimate. Taehyung could feel the warmth of Jungkook's skin, the subtle tension in the younger's shoulder as if he sensed the shift too. The cameras were relentless, capturing every move, every glance. When a fan livestreamed the moment, it instantly went viral. Every subtle touch, every lingering eye contact was blown up in slow motion. Fans noticed immediately, dissecting every frame, replaying it hundreds of times. Taehyung's gaze, the one that had always been quiet, now spoke volumes. It wasn't jealousy, it was focus, attention, care, and a silent declaration that Jungkook had him completely. Backstage after the performance, the world outside the arena was already buzzing with theories. Clips were being shared on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, each one magnifying the subtle gestures on stage. But inside the quiet of the green room, Taehyung barely noticed the chaos. He found Jungkook sitting on a folding chair, towel draped around his neck, water bottle in hand. "You okay?" Taehyung asked, leaning against the wall. His voice was low, intimate, a stark contrast to the roaring crowd they just left behind. Jungkook looked up, eyes soft but full of that playful glint that always made Taehyung's heart stutter. "Yeah, better now that I'm not dancing under bright lights." Taehyung smirked, a teasing edge in his tone, but it didn't hide the truth beneath it. "Careful, you're making me distracted." Jungkook raised an eyebrow, a grin spreading across his face. "Distracted? From what?" "From noticing everything about you," Taehyung admitted quietly, almost a whisper. His hand twitched slightly as he spoke, the words heavier than the air around them. Jungkook's eyes softened immediately, the teasing replaced with an intensity that mirrored his own. They sat there, the green room dimly lit, the chaos of fans and cameras outside fading into insignificance. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, they weren't performing. They weren't pretending. They were just two people sharing the space, noticing each other, existing quietly but profoundly in a moment that belonged entirely to them.